Hi, Crimies. I'm your host, MAB, and you're listening to the Coffee and Crime podcast. I hope you've had a good week and that you're ready for the weekend. I want to start by warning you that this story has partner and animal violence, so friendly trigger warning. And on that note, before we get started, please listen to the following disclaimer.
The content delivered through this podcast will at times be graphic in nature and describe criminal conduct which includes but is not limited to violence, sexual assault, and homicide. All suspects described in the podcast are considered innocent until they are found guilty in a court of law. I'm not an expert on any subjects covered, I'm just an interested party. The content will be troubling and upsetting to some people, therefore, viewer or listener discretion is advised.
So this story takes place in Moncton, New Brunswick, and I did give some quick facts about Moncton in one of my previous episodes, but I'll give you a few new quick facts this time. So in 2018, Moncton had a population of approximately 152,604 residents. And just to give you a quick idea, that equals a density of roughly 60 residents per square kilometer. I grew up in Moncton, as I've mentioned before in previous episodes, and as woodsy and it felt so out of the country at the time, it has definitely changed since then. I know I mentioned Magnetic Hill before as well, but it's actually so interesting, and it's almost like a had to be there joke. If you've never been, you just don't get it, and it's really worth going. It doesn't take long. It's not something that takes, an hour to visit and try, but it's definitely worth it. Back in the day, it was free, but I went to take the kids, I think it was 2 years ago, and now they charge. Go figure, right? But anyway, it's worth it. Cute little spot. It's interesting. And just to describe it a little bit more, you basically park your car, I think it's at the bottom of the hill, and you put it in park. And the optical illusion is that your car backs up all the way up the hill. It's pretty neat. But like I said, kind of have to be there. You need to try it. And the last fun fact is that the Acadian settlers in Moncton established a marshland farming community, and they named it Le Coude, which translates to the elbow. And this was because it extended to Petitcodiac and Memramcook River valleys, which finally reached Moncton in 1733. So on that note, welcome to episode 5, Love Isn't Supposed to Hurt, the story of Naomi Bartlette. In 2017, Naomi and Réjean both worked for a laundry dry cleaning business, which is where they met. They started dating in the summer of 2017, and court documents confirmed that they were a couple and that this was an alleged case of domestic violence, which has now since been confirmed. Now, before we keep going, I gathered some statistic, and honestly, it blew my mind. So I just really wanted to share it with my crimies. In Canada, approximately 2/3, so 66.6% of homicides are committed by an intimate partner. And here's a more detailed breakdown of those stats. So of the homicides where an accused person was identified, 66% were perpetrated by an intimate partner. About 28% were committed by a family member. 5% were committed by a friend or an acquaintance, and 1% by a stranger. Crazy. So technically, not to scare anybody, that's not what I'm here for, but based on what I just shared with you, if you get murdered, there's literally a 99% chance that it was by someone you knew and not just a random person. Let that sink in and choose your circle carefully. After the couple started dating, Naomi moved into the Fleet Street residence with Réjean shortly before Christmas of 2017. And in an article, it said that by that February, so, December, January, February, a couple months later, she had already fallen out with most of her friends and her family. I don't know the specific dynamics of their relationship, but I do know that I've been there, and that's a red flag of abusive relationships. They isolate you from everyone, your friends, family, and then when you're in it, honestly, it's so hard to see it until you leave and you're gone, and hindsight's 2020. And then by that time, you realize that you've literally lost everyone you loved and cared for. So Naomi was born in 1985. She was 33 when she lost her life in such a tragic way. She was born in Moncton, New Brunswick, and was survived by her dad, her stepbrother, and her 2 sons. These people didn't ask to be part of this story, so I'm not going to mention their names out of respect for the family. If you go digging, you'll be able to find them as usual. Based on what I saw from her Facebook pictures, she seemed proud to be her dad's daughter. There's a few pictures where they're big smiling side by side, and you can just tell they're happy to be together. Some articles say she was a single mom, but something I'll mention later made me question that statement. And maybe she was for years, and then it changed shortly before the murder. I'm not really sure, but I'll bring it up later. So before her life ended so abruptly, she had plans of returning to school to further her education to become a paramedic. Tina Purley, who says she helped raise Naomi for the past 20 years as one of her own, says, quote, "That was her dream. She wanted to help people," end quote. Naomi was also said to be full of life, and she was the epitome of a redhead. So she was bright, she was feisty, full of life, and she would never back down. Know any redheads? If you know, you know. I think us French people have similar qualities, though, but anyway. So Réjean Gautreau was 38 at the time of the murder, and he was born in Memramcook in 1980, but at some point in his life made the move to Moncton. A few quick facts about Memramcook, since we haven't talked about this one yet. It's known for its rich Acadian heritage and its scenic beauty. I take the kids apple picking at Verger-Béliveau every year, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's just valleys and greenery, and it's just beautiful. The first settlers were Mi'kmaq people who lived along the river, and Memramcook means crooked river. The first Acadian National Convention was held in Memramcook in 1881, which is also when the term Acadian was defined and the date for the national holiday was chosen, which is August 15th. In French, it's often known as Le 15 août des Fous. Big part of my heritage. So back to Réjean, I know he went to my high school because I remember partying with him a few times. However, I did not expect this. Like the few times that I remember him being at the same party as I was, he came across as a keep to yourself, quiet kind of guy. But when I reached out to one of my old friends to see if they could share anything more about him, because I didn't really know him, she just said that she knew him to be fake quiet and that he really wasn't a great partner in a past relationship either prior to getting with Naomi. So there's a pattern here for sure. For this story, I'm taking you back to April 8th, 2018. This is the day that Naomi's lifeless body was found in a Fleet Street residence in Moncton. Police have reason to believe that she had been deceased since April 6th, so 2 days prior to being found. So the couple had decided they would move to British Columbia in May, the next month, which is all the way across the country, because they just wanted a fresh new start, away from everybody, away from everything they knew, just start back at square one. But that night, they had an argument about Réjean's crack cocaine habit, and Naomi decided that she was done dealing with all of this and that she was moving out the following day. Can't take it anymore, I'm leaving. But what Naomi didn't know was that there would be no next day, and she would never get to leave. Side note here, this is another red flag of an abusive relationship. Anyone who's been in one or knows somebody who's been in one of the most dangerous times is when the victim makes the decision to leave. That's when the abuser feels like they're losing all power and all control, and they need to act now to stop this from happening. And I'm not saying it always ends in murder, but if we think of the stats I shared earlier, and even if you think of this story, clearly it definitely does, and it did. So that night, after the argument ensued, Réjean took the leg of a table and struck Naomi in the head. Then once he managed to knock her down, he got on top of her, straddling her, and he strangled her. As if this wasn't enough, once he was done strangling her, he began to beat her again with the leg from the table. Once he was done, wrapped the body up in a blanket, stuffed her in the bedroom closet. How horrible is that? What a horrific death. And honestly, I can only hope that the first blow rendered her unconscious so that she didn't have to feel anything or live through or be awake and aware through the rest of what happened to her. After this, Réjean cleaned up a pool of blood, and as if a murder hadn't just happened, he left to go smoke more crack. Another side note, I'm not encouraging you to imagine strangling anybody, not at all. But look at the length of your arms. Strangulation's a pretty intimate and personal act of violence because you're so close to the other person's face. And honestly, you're watching them while your hands are around their neck, literally squeezing the life out of them. Just talking about this way, it just gives me chills. It gives me shivers. I did find an article that mentioned that they had 2 roommates at the time, but the article didn't confirm whether those 2 were home when this happened or if they weren't. Honestly, to me, it's irrelevant because if they were, maybe they didn't hear anything, and because we don't know the dynamics of Naomi and Réjean's relationship, maybe loud arguments, etc., were the norm for them. And I also would like to think that they must not have been home because if they were home, I honestly think the media would have mentioned them more often than they have, which is basically not at all. Now, again, I don't have a lot of information. I did reach out to some family and friends, but I was met with silence, and some people said they would come back to me, and things just didn't work out. Nobody's fault. I still appreciate the effort. But even though Naomi was described as a single mom, her kids were thankfully living with their dad at the time of the murders. They weren't present. I'm not sure when the custody arrangement changed, but when I was looking through her Facebook account, and please take this with a grain of salt because it has not been confirmed, and please pardon any grammar and sentence structure. I'm reading it for you exactly as it was typed. But there's a post by someone saying, and I quote, "This is X," because I'm not going to say their name. "Funny, Naomi signed over custody of the boys on her own and pleaded with me to take them. She couldn't control them. I never let anyone talk shit about her, especially in front of the boys. When she got scared of her man, she put the boys in my hands. She usually told me about her abusive boyfriends, and she knew I'd come like a train if I knew she was getting beat up. She called me, and on occasion, I scared the boyfriend to help her get away. She became a witness, to other things Réjean did. I told her not to hang out in Moncton, 3rd worst city in Canada, and they know of it. It's worse." End quote. So this leads me to believe their relationship had some physical violence if what those comments say are true, and that she voluntarily signed over custody of her children, whether it was to protect them in the end or not, I don't know. I'm not sure if any of this took place, so I can't really say. I would assume if somebody's saying that, then it must be true, or there may just be parts of it that is true. So in conclusion, let's talk about sentencing and jail time. In court, it was stated that Réjean had an extensive criminal record and a history of violence, depression, alcohol, and drug abuse that all started when he was around 15 years old. So there's also something else I didn't tell you yet. Not only did Réjean end Naomi's life, but he also took the life of her dog. There's 3 things I will never, ever understand. Murder, period, obviously. One is the killing of children. I don't understand, as a parent, I don't understand how you can take a life away that you help give and create. Number 2 is partner violence. I don't understand how you can kill someone that you once loved. And in no specific order, the killing of animals, like dogs. This dog absolutely did nothing to deserve that. Not that Naomi did either, but I'm just saying. So Réjean's defense lawyer, Annie Maltais, read a statement on his behalf during his sentencing as he sat in the prisoner's box, which said, quote, "I can't describe how everything went so wrong so fast. I miss her each and every day. I will never forgive myself for my actions." End quote. Réjean admitted murdering Naomi and then pleaded guilty to a charge of second-degree murder. This also happened after a trial by judge alone was chosen, avoiding a trial by jury. I'm not a criminal, but I would imagine if I was, I would choose that route too, because you're automatically pleading to the lesser charge, not knowing if the jury would find you guilty of first-degree murder. So in Canada, second-degree murder comes with an automatic life sentence, but parole eligibility ranges from 10 to 25 years. And get this, when Réjean was charged, he was actually charged for a total of 7 offenses. So these offenses included willfully killing Naomi's dog, which we just talked about, robberies, and some DUIs. To top this all off, one of these robberies was believed to have taken place on the same day Naomi died. Let me break down the charges for you. In August, Réjean pleaded guilty of robbing a Needs convenience store on Mountain Road, a Subway restaurant on Moncton Avenue, another Subway on Mountain Road, and a Needs fast fuel also on Mountain Road. This was coupled with 2 drunk driving offenses related to charges from February 16th and February 21st, and the robberies were said to have happened between February 6th and April 8th, 2018. And remember, April 8th is the day that Naomi's lifeless body was found. So, Réjean was sentenced to 6 years in prison for the robberies and the 4 businesses, along with a 6-month sentence for killing Naomi's dog. These will be served concurrently with the sentence he's serving for murder. Justice Jean-Paul Ouellet described the murder as brutal against a defenseless partner, a crime of passion under the influence of drugs and alcohol. He ruled that Réjean would be required to wait at least 15 years before being eligible to apply for parole. So it still doesn't mean it'll be granted, but he can apply in 15 years. Justice Ouellet also noted the pre-sentence report, writing that Réjean is sincerely remorseful and intends to seek treatment and counseling while incarcerated. Not even going to comment. So thank you for listening to today's episode. As always, I love to know your thoughts. I really appreciate you listening and choosing to spend your time with me. So do you think that people who have a history of crime for over half their lives can be rehabilitated? Please leave your thoughts in the comments. As usual, please do all of the things, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, subscribe, follow, like, share, all of the things. And remember my little corny line, crime is a waste of time. Until next time, bye, crimies.